Yeah. We good?
1 minute. Here we go. I think we're all set.
Okay. All right, I'm calling this meeting to order. Today is Monday, December 13th. This is the Communications Committee. The second item on the agenda is roll call. Tracy, do you want to call the roll?
Here.
Here. The next item is the approval of the October 4th, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Jean Marie chimed in that she approved them. She read them and approved them.
Great. All right, can I get a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Next item on the agenda is presentation and discussion with Scarborough Community Connections. I'm going to invite Janice Cohen and Dana Morris-Jones to come up and sit. So just some background here. I believe at one point, Janice and Dana had approached Assistant Town Manager Liam Gallagher to potentially have a conversation with the town regarding civil discourse and different methods and ways to have effective public engagement. And so through some email conversations, I think we aligned that having you guys come to the communications committee might be a good first step to engage the council and talk a little bit more about your experience, your expertise, what you've observed in the community since you founded Scarborough Community Connections and some of the other work you guys have been doing in Scarborough. So before we jump into that, I don't know, did you guys want to introduce yourself so that the public
Sure,
knows a little bit more about you?
sure. And some of you we know or you know of us, and not all of you. I've met April recently, and obviously we know John. Anyways, so I have lived in Scarborough for it's getting close to 20 years now. My profession has been as an organizational consultant. I'm trained as a psychologist and as a mediator. My work has always had to do with facilitating problem solving collaboratively, communication across boundaries and that sort of thing. So having done that for many, many years professionally, and being personally very committed to the whole idea of collaboration and problem solving and effective interaction. At one point after living here for several years, I kind of looked around and said, you know, I'm not sure that we're doing that as well as we could in my own community. And that was the beginning of Janice and mine. She'll tell you about her background, sort of putting our heads together and saying, let's see if we can do something to make it better here. So we've been working on that for 4 years.
Is it 4?
It's almost
Wow,
4.
I'm getting older. Time shorter. Okay. Yes, and I'm Janice Cohen, and I've lived here 5 years, which makes it good because we get the older person and the younger person's vision. And as you know, a lot of people who moved in have a different idea of Scarborough than those who have been here for a long time. But I'm just going to tell you a quick story about me. And like Dana, I'm very committed to collaboration. It started when I was working with, I ran a foundation. I was working with the department, the education committee of the legislature, and we decided that we needed, if you remember back in the 90s, it was Scholes 2000, we were going to reform education. That came out of the Bush administration. And so with the help of Maine Development Foundation, we put 48 stakeholders together, all the people from Department of Education, Principals Association, Parents Association, the Real Crime section, and we worked for 2 years, and we came up with a wonderful report called Success Begins with Education. And we celebrated, and about 3 days later, I said, you know what? This isn't going to change education, because the people who do education weren't at the table. And so it made me stand back and say, how do we create change and engage the people who are going to be affected by the change? So how do we get that? And out of that started the Institute for Civic Leadership. I started that in the early 90s, and I think one of your town managers, Beverly, went to that program, several of that. Anyways, as a result of that, and watching people go through the program and realizing that collaboration is very different than the old form of management. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of self-exploration. How can I be with people without using authority as the way to make things happen? And the results are great. So I'm glad the program is still going under the Maine Development Foundation now. But that's my story. So how I got here.
Okay, just to add a little bit, I've actually done some work with the town of Scarborough on a couple of occasions. When Ron Owen was the town manager before Tom Hall, my partner and I actually were engaged to do some work with a couple of controversies. One of them had to do with the Black Point Park. I won't go into the details, but we did a whole process with the neighborhood who was kind of outraged about something happening that they thought they hadn't been fully informed and involved in. And I actually wrote an article about that that wound up in the National Civic Review. I didn't name Scarborough. And I worked on the Pine Point situation for a while. And then actually we came and did some training with the entire council on 2 occasions around communication and collaboration and so forth, interaction, and a lot of good stuff. So I have that history, but we haven't done anything for a while other than work with having created this little SCC organization, which
Scarborough Community
Scarborough
Connection.
Community Connections, exactly. So we want to just talk tonight about the topic of public engagement. And I want to start off by commending the council. I know over the last couple of years, a lot of new mechanisms have been created to make a great attempt at keeping residents informed. So the website's been improved and the newsletter has come out. And I know for a while there were some listening sessions going on when people could actually get together in the same room and talk to each other, and that was great. And now just recently you've done this survey. So I know that you guys are trying really hard to keep residents informed. We think all of that is great, and we also think it doesn't go far enough. We think that it's fallen short in a number of different ways.
Can I just say something? I don't know, I know John was there. We did the SEC with the library sponsored a man to come in virtually and talk about, he's an expert in civil discourse last week. And so we got input from, I think there were 40 people on the call. We got input from people from Scarborough. So it's not what Dana's going to say,
Right.
It's not just a result of her and my experience. It's really what we're hearing in
Yeah.
the community, probably what you're hearing too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what we're hearing is that people want to be involved in a different way. They really want to know that their voices are being heard. They want to understand how decisions are being made, and they want an opportunity not to make the decision themselves, but to influence the decisions, to have some impact, to know that their opinions make a difference. So it really winds up coming down to trust. And I think across the nation, we've seen that people have lost trust in their government. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that government is not as transparent as people want it to be. They want to understand. I know we had this conversation with Tom Hall a while ago, and this was a couple of years ago, but he says, decision making is not pretty. It's like sausage making, and nobody wants to see the sausage making. But you know what? They do. They actually do want to see the sausage making, and they want to have a chance to inspect the machinery, and make sure they know what's going in there. And it's very challenging. I mean, there's no question that it's not an easy thing to do, to involve and engage people. But all of the attempts that you're making really do fall short in some ways. First of all, some of it relies on technology. Not everybody has access to technology or knows how to get information that way. The format of the town council meetings, where people are invited to speak, can be really frustrating and off-putting to people. They feel like they make an effort to put together a presentation, but they don't really get any feedback or information about whether or not their input has been heard. They don't have an opportunity to engage in conversation. They also, I think, to me, one of the biggest problems is that decision-making is complex. The issues that you guys are dealing with are complex. And you're also dealing with a community where there's a wide range of opinions. We're not so homogeneous anymore. We're diverse geographically, more and more we're diverse socioeconomically. People have different interests and different opinions. They don't always fall along like party lines, but for a variety of reasons, people have differences. And so making decisions, you know, it's easy if you see what you see is like down your own little row of corn, you know, if you're standing in a cornfield. But if you're looking up here where you guys are supposed to be working for the whole community, you're seeing all the complexities and you're seeing the diversity of opinions. And so it's messy and hard, but the people who are standing down there on the ground, they don't see all of that. And they don't have a chance to really understand how difficult it is to make a decision that's good for everybody in the community. So what we're suggesting is that when you allow people to engage in really constructive ways, they understand better what goes into a decision. And ultimately, they may not agree with the decisions that get made, but if they understand the process and they feel like they've had an opportunity to impact it, most people will walk out saying, you know, I don't like it, but I can live with it and I can support it because I understand that it was made with our best interests at heart. That's really what we're after. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but we think it's worth it. So we're going to explain a little bit what we mean by public engagement and what that might look like.
So I think, I don't know, we want to leave enough time for you to ask questions.
Yeah.
Because when I think of civic engagement, I worked for government before at the state level. And actually, I don't think I wanted civic engagement. I thought I was living with the problems every day. I didn't need to hear opinions from outside. But it depends on the motivation. And more we're finding that government officials are realizing that there's value, because it's not just about leadership, it's about followership. And if you don't have trust, you don't have followership. And that's where we get the anger. And that's where we get pushback all the time in a not positive way. So one of the things Dana said is that it's an iterative process. That means that you'll always be, as long as you're serving on the council, you'll always be in the decision-making seat. Nobody's going to take that away from you, and it couldn't function. But the fact that there's a communication system that engages people, not just at the time when we tell them what the issue is and at the first meeting, but where is the decision-making process now? What have we learned? So I often use the word iterative, so the process itself is not straightforward. And sometimes I know I've gone to public hearings or gone to meetings and I hear something and I see how people react, and then I go away and that's the last thing I hear about it. Now, again, as Dana said, you do a great job of trying to communicate to the public, but I'll ask you, if they're not feeling they've been communicated to, we're going to try something else, and that's really what we're here about. So the issue, if I'm sitting in your place and going, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much time now. How can I possibly spend more time in trying to engage people? It's up to them to come. We put it on the computer, we put it in the newspaper, it's up to them to come. So you focus on the issues that really matter. When do we need to get engaged? Who's going to be affected by this? Is it long range affecting the community? So that's the first question. And then it's who are the stakeholders? Sometimes it's the whole community. That's pretty hard, but sometimes it is, and we have to get people representing different groups. Other times, maybe it's a neighborhood. I live in Easton Village, and I walk my dog on Higgins Beach, so I know that's one issue where you can get those people together pretty quickly. So getting the people that are going to be affected by the issue, whether it's directly or through representatives, which by the way you are, but we're talking about maybe personalizing it more so we know somebody in my neighborhood is involved in that. Design the process that engages these stakeholders early and often. So a lot of the work Dana and I do is not just we're going to have a meeting. It's like, what is the first meeting going to be? And as a result of that meeting, what decisions do we have made, or what will people have learned that we can do the next step? Sometimes you design a process for one meeting, but a lot of times it's more than one. I know that some of your meetings go on, like the comprehensive plan probably wasn't done in one meeting. We communicate how the decisions will be made. You'll always be the final decision maker, but what decisions can be made, and is there any room for decision making by the group, which if you wanted to bring them to consensus, you might not. But if I say to you, I'm going to get your input, but I'm going to make the decision, that's okay. We've said that. If I say, we're going to ask you for this group's decision on this, then I know that. And this, I think, the next one is one of the biggest ones, and I'm going to hand these out to you, is to provide information necessary for stakeholders to participate effectively. They will never know all that you may know. They will never know all that the town staff know about an issue. I know it gets really into the weeds and we can't, but what do they need to do to participate effectively? The better informed they are, the more help they're going to be to you, the more positive the process will be. And this is where Dana and I get facilitate according to guidelines for constructive conversation. I too am a mediator, and it's amazing how you can get people together who have been enemies and turn that into a good conversation. But there are some guidelines you have to follow. And often somebody needs to facilitate who does it. If depending on the nature of the conversation, is there going to be a lot of people who think differently. And so we always share those guidelines. And then we often have to remind people these are the guidelines as we go through. I would say use consensus as a decision-making process whenever possible. And a lot of times in public policy, you can't have consensus. Consensus is not your way, it's my way. It's something that we all can agree to. And it's hard to achieve, but if you can, and it gets the buy-in that you're looking for. And then the last thing is communicate, keep all stakeholders informed. And not just to tell them about the process, tell them that we got this issue and invite them to a meeting. Some will come, some won't come. But what is the communication process to keep as many people as possible informed, whether they like it or not, whether they're, this is the most important issue to them? People are busy today, you know that, you're busy, and I congratulate you for being willing to serve even though you're busy, but it's a way that we communicate that helps people listen, participate, and feel, and I always say you feel honored because you cared enough about them to give them some information. And so they don't feel closed out from the public policy process. That's hard. But the communication is a really important part. And as I said, in an iterative way. So I gave you some information. This is what I heard back. We're going to use this in this way. There's all kinds of design of the process tells you how you'll use information and how you'll communicate. And I can give these, I don't have to worry about it.
So we also, I don't know if you got, we sent out an article ahead of time that looks like this. Hopefully if you have had a chance to take a look, that's just another example. Portsmouth, New Hampshire has started to experiment with some new ways of holding public meetings, and it's happening all across the country. There are lots of opportunities. You know, one of the challenges is to get more than just the usual suspects to show up. I mean, you all know what I mean. It's the same people. And often it's people who have an axe to grind, right? what we really want to do is create opportunities to bring in a wide range of people and to get them involved in a way that they can walk away feeling proud of what is going on here and like they contributed to it. I think, you know, I think there are tons of opportunities. I think the fact that you guys put out the survey creates absolutely fabulous opportunities right now. One of the things that I did early in my career, I worked for a very large utility, gas and electric utility. And I used to, as the head of communications, whatever my title was back then, I used to fly around with the CEO to various locations in the all over the system. It was all over the state of Michigan, actually. And he would listen to we'd invite, you know, groups of people, a range of people, from people on who worked on the factory floor, not factory exactly, the, what do you call it, plant, a power plant, all the way to, you know, managers and all levels of people, but we'd invite a random sample to each of these meetings, and then the CEO would just listen. I mean, it would just really tell us what it's like to work here and what bothers you and what could be different. And I would take notes. And the most important thing about it is that he often would say, if he had an answer to a question, he would answer them then and there. If he didn't have an answer to a question, he would say, I'll get back to you. And that was what my department did. We ran around getting answers to questions, so everybody felt like they'd really been heard. That same utility put out a employee opinion survey every year annually. And it was well-intentioned, but after a while, it really made people mad because they were asked to sit down and fill out this long survey. And a lot of times they never heard what happened to, you know, what they took that time to fill out. So you create those opportunities. And right now, the fact that you've got this survey, I think gives you a great opportunity because you'll have all this wonderful data that you can share with people and get their feedback. You can use that as a basis for discussion with people about, here's what we heard. What do you think about that? What does that mean to you? Why do you think people answered that way? What do you think we should do about it? What a great opportunity to begin to get people involved all across town. You could do it neighborhood by neighborhood. You could do it for everybody with a cross section. But it's just a thought. It's kind of a good possibility of a place to start. So
Great. Any,
what do you think?
Thank you for your time. I'm gonna take my mask off.
Yeah,
This is
thank
boring.
you. Do you mind if I do that too?
I think you're good. You're right with the survey. Definitely a good springboard for it. I just want to clarify a few things. I've been here in town for 38 years.
Okay,
Ran for the council 2 years ago for two reasons. Communication, I said there wasn't any, okay? And growth, too much. Have worked very hard on both, making great strides. Actually, we had Eric from the communication director of the state of Maine says that Scarborough, Maine is the premier town in the state for communication. I found that to be a good compliment. So we do communicate. We have made strides. We know we have additional work to do. COVID has been our hang up.
I get it.
We were doing engagement. Matter of fact, the last engagement here was about WEX.
Mm-hmm.
In this room right here, we had 20 people show up. It was a very good, very low profile, non-intimidating environment, collected a lot of information, shared a lot of information. Tom Hall and I just had a community engagement with the folks behind the old public safety building because they're a little upset about what's going on. Understandable. We had 8 people come in, share their ideas, came up and help us solution things. And Tom is actually running with implementing some of those things.
Fabulous.
So that does happen.
That's great.
We would like to do it more. I put about 25 to 30 hours a week into this council. I'm a little disappointed that when we send out 4,200 stamped envelope, return envelopes, it'll take you 15 minutes and we got back less than 20%. That's a little disheartening, but I'll get over that. But that's some of our reality. You know, engagement is a two-way street.
For sure.
You can lead that horse to water. We videotape, you know, every meeting. for review. We post everything out in documents. We can see who's coming to see them. And I'll tell you, an awful lot of it is just non-existent. So our goal, I think, is to try to get more in it. And I'm hoping if COVID ever lets up, now with the new public safety building, we've got the Agro Hall down on the other side of town, we've got the library, because we used to do the library. We did find that more people would show up if it was single topic focused, right? So that way you could engage with a common theme and maybe get some results. Looking forward to that, just don't know when the COVID's gonna let up.
So prior to the COVID, do you feel like you were getting that kind of response you want? 'Cause when I hear the word, well, I don't trust and I don't feel that what I say, a neighborhood who's
Yeah.
I think he said since 1960. And is it that it's been COVID that it's pushed it back so much that it?
Well, the public engagement, yeah, I mean, one-on-one. I think a lot of people, when they come here, don't understand process. Okay,
For sure.
a public hearing is a public hearing. It's not a Q&A with the town council. If the COVID's done anything, at least it lets me, because I saw it, I can tell they're not laughing at them. I'm with them. I used to feel the same way. They come to express, but they're heard. We definitely listen to our public. We get a lot of emails. A lot of them aren't real nice, but we hear it and we react to it. Right now with our parking, we were gonna go up on the parking fees. Huge outcry. We made some adjustments. It's not gonna please everybody, but people are heard, but they do have to voice an opinion. You know, I told Tom Hall that, you know, if I was fully retired, I'd probably ride around on my bike all day long, banging on people's doors to get them informed. I write a lot in the leader. The leader goes to 10,000 homes in the town. I mean, you get to a certain point, it's how much more can you do? If you do not want to engage, you don't want to engage. And then you do end up with a group of known individuals that kind of consume the topic. But we are full, and we are representatives, so we do represent the whole town. And there is no groupthink on this town council, I guarantee you that. There are 7 individual thinkers here. So the town's very well represented. I have a phone, you can call me. I have an email. There are lots of ways to engage. So have to have it a little bit on both sides of this. We have to get the folks. But we'd definitely like to hear ideas of how to get people to come in, either here at Agler or Public Safety. This can be intimidating. A lot of people aren't, you know, speakers in public.
Exactly. Right. One of the things in this article at the end, actually, the guy who's quoted, who's on the town council in Portsmouth, John Tabor, happens to be a client of ours and a friend of ours. And he wound up saying they were all very excited about the new, you know, two-way participative small group form. And then they realized some people were really uncomfortable with that. And he realized we got to try everything, because it's not one size fits
And you
all.
can pick and choose, because I read the article, I actually went to their website. I thought there was some great information there. Again, not to make excuses, but an awful lot of what we do, like I said, I do 25 to 30 hours a week. I'm not pushing paper. I'm researching. We have a very heavy night this Wednesday night. The average person would not even be expected to spend hundreds of hours understanding a topic that we're going to make a decision on. So you can imagine the chaos that would ensue if you brought in 20 or 30 people on a subject that you do not make decisions by emotion.
Two things. One is that we're not saying this is for all issues. It certainly is not.
Could pick and choose.
You pick and choose. And hopefully, I guess, one of the things that's near and dear to me, I actually wrote a book about conflict resolution, and I'm different than a lot of people in believing that emotion shouldn't be, shouldn't really be what leads in any conflict resolution process. You need to acknowledge emotions, but emotionality should not be a part of what makes the decision. And in a well-facilitated meeting, emotion doesn't dominate. I mean, people are encouraged to express their concerns, but exactly.
So what's the 2020 budget meeting? That was fun, right?
Well,
Relationships were damaged.
I think if you're going to engage with people, it can't be the standard, and they get to that in the article. It can't be what we're used to, where we come to like a public hearing and people come up and speak, and then they go back and we have no idea what goes on after that. So part of making it interesting is making it different. And I don't know how those meetings went that you had that you said went really well. Maybe that was. But actually, the council set with small groups, and a council person would sit with each small group and hear and ask questions. And you're right, most citizens don't have the information you have, so it's kind of an informing process as well. So it's two ways. And and the purpose really isn't to make that a decision, it's to make people feel heard and supportive of the community.
exactly.
And if what you're saying is you think you're there and it's only COVID that's got in the way, then what you're doing is working. Okay, and if you think that, well, I'm going on my personal experience since I've been here and what I've been hearing. And from people who've been here a long time and new people. So I could be wrong easily. I
No,
don't
I
have
hear it
that
too.
wide a range.
So you're not wrong. You're not definitely
Yeah.
wrong. And we're not set. We've got
Yeah.
more to go.
You know,
Oh, it's okay. That's all right.
okay.
So I was gonna say, one of the challenges that comes up, that I think of is, working hard and working smart, right? So Ken works very, very hard and to get all of this information out. But to your point, if people don't trust the information that's coming out, they're not gonna read it.
Right.
And so Ken and the school board and as school board chair, can put out 1,000 articles about the turf track. And I still, the day after the election, had people coming up to me and saying, well, I can't believe that passed with that vandalism that happened.
Right.
And you just
Right.
wanna crawl under your car.
Yeah.
And honestly, because we put out so much information, we had the beautiful website, Allison made everything like just, so uniform so that it was one message that came from the board and the town, and we covered every single media that we could think of to get the information out. But if people don't trust the information, they're not going to invest the time to read
Right.
it and understand,
Right.
the
So
facts.
that's a perfect example. I mean, so again, this is not an overnight process.
Right,
This is a process of building trust gradually,
right.
and it takes a long time. But again, to make the point, people have their own point of view, and it's very easy because of their own confirmation bias to think that everybody thinks like I do, and then you go around and look for information that confirms what you already think. If you come to a meeting where there's an opportunity to hear how large the range of opinion really is, you might walk out of there scratching your head saying, oh my gosh, I really had no idea. And I mean, just to give you another quick story, years ago, I helped to facilitate a meeting among all the different stakeholders, constituencies that had to do with forest management across the country. Everything from people who, chained themselves to trees to keep them from being cut down, to paper executives, to federal agency representatives and private landowners. And at the beginning of a 3-day meeting, there were people who we sat people together grouped by differences. So each table was a mix of different people. And there were people who would sit like this at the beginning, they would be damned if they would talk to that guy over there. That wasn't going to happen. By the end of 3 days of a well-facilitated meeting that had tons of information and tons of opportunity for people to talk about a variety of things, those same people were walking down the hall together saying, I don't know how I'm going to explain to my constituencies back home that I now understand this other point of view. It takes time, and it takes a lot of skillful thought about designing meetings and how to facilitate them, but that's possible. And it seems to us that there's this time in our country, the need is so great, and we're all feeling a little helpless about it. But the only way to make a difference is to do what you can locally. You're not going to impact it.
So I think, just from my view, kind of a couple of things I heard that I think are worth considering as we go forward. One is, like, I wrote down 3 E's because I think these are the E's of things maybe that we need to think about. potentially as we think about other communications methods or opportunities. Educate, engage, and earn trust. So educate, I think a lot of what I heard through some of the conversation was a lot of times I think people just don't know and therefore they assume.
Yeah.
And so we can do as much education as we can, but sometimes that goes on deaf ears and or they just aren't paying attention. So it's like, how can we think through how we can educate different people more broadly? I think we've done a phenomenal job. Everything you mentioned about Allison, she's been here, has been great in terms of consistent messaging, different channels. So I think we're doing our best to kind of get the information out there and educate. But to Counselor Johnson's point, to be educated, you also have to be willing to like absorb and listen and not turn a blind eye when the answer might not be something you want to hear. And so how do we continue to improve education to the public through different methods? The engagement piece, again, I think like as Counselor Johnson said, we're doing so much around public engagement. There are probably little things we can do, like some of the stuff mentioned in the article that could maybe help. Even at the rules and policy meeting before we formed the new council, we had talked about potentially putting an agenda item to look at our agenda format for public meetings.
Mhm.
Because one counselor had a thought of potentially moving counselor comment after the public comment, so at least we could engage and respond back to the public, so it's not just one-sided, because right now that part of the
Right.
agenda comes at the end after everybody's probably tuned out and they might not hear. And I think historically we've kind of used that as a more of like thanking folks or thanking something specific. Like I don't know if we've really figured out how do you use that public comment at the end and if that's really the right place for it. So I think
Mhm.
that was discussed and that might be something to explore in terms of agenda format. And the earning trust, I think that's just hard and that's going to take time.
Yeah.
And like communications is hard and there is no silver bullet. And I think
Right.
all we can do, and I think we're all committed to this, is to continuously improve and find different ways to potentially do it. Some things might work, some things might not work. But I think we just have to continue to try and see what we can find. So I love the idea of potentially when the timing is right, or even trying virtual, trying to think of how do we restart those listening sessions.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have, I mean, with COVID definitely was a barrier probably the first year, but I think we've kind of found a rhythm, at least with the hybrid. And I think we've seen a lot of good hybrid participation. So I think we could potentially look to something next year if we wanted to figure out. The survey is going to be an excellent tool to help us maybe target specific areas where, based on the community's feedback, we might want to have some listening sessions to dig a little bit deeper, which is also something Ken and I have discussed of like, how do we do that? And then even I know some of the department heads, based on the results, are planning to do their own follow-up survey to dig into more details and get more feedback. So I think we're going to be rich next year in terms of data. And I think we're all committed to finding ways to use that data to help us engage and have conversations. I do think one of the things that I often come across with people, and I think it's hard, but they, a lot of times they don't know. And sometimes when they don't know, if the trust isn't there, then sometimes they assume negative intent.
They do.
And I think that's not a Scarborough thing. I think that's a human nature thing. And I think it's on us, again, through that education and engagement, to try and break that as best we can. But I think it's a challenge, and I don't think we'll find that silver bullet, like I said. So I think all we can do is do our best and try and come up with different creative things. And so I'm looking forward to this committee this year continuing to have this conversation and see if there's new things we want to do to build on the success that we've had in the past 2 years, especially with Allison and Ken leading the way. But again, I think communications is a continuous thing, and there's always more we could do better. And I think we'll hopefully find some other opportunities.
The little thing you just mentioned, it is a little thing, but because it's process and it's government, it takes a while to get it done. Moving the council comments, that way you have a quasi interaction, because
Mhm.
hopefully you're reacting to the public comment in a way to help them understand your point of view or acknowledge what you've heard, things like
Right.
that. So and you're right, that's down at the very end
Yeah.
of the agenda. Sometimes 2 hours after the public hearing, and people check out. So
Yeah.
little things
Yeah.
like that.
I think little
Well, we've
control.
heard that, you know, at all levels,
Yeah.
on the school
Yeah.
side too, that public comment is just not fulfilling.
Yeah.
When you come
let's
and
do
they're
that. We can
prepared and
recommend-
they've taken the time and they've
Push that forward.
practiced and they've timed themselves and they've made sure, because that's nerve wracking to come to the podium and then we all just sit here.
Exactly.
And then they sit down and
And they
then,
think
and then
we're
we move
ignoring
on to the next
them.
order of
Yeah.
business.
Well,
and
that's
you
what I
just
mean
feel
by
so
off-putting.
deflated.
It's-
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I
It is,
think-
and to your point, Ken, I think sometimes just acknowledgement, you
Right.
can't necessarily give somebody an answer right then and there, but to even,
I
as,
hear you,
as stupid
right.
as it sounds, to repeat it back so
Yeah.
that the person really knows, oh, they actually did
Yeah.
hear and understand what I
You're
said.
right.
That helps a lot.
That's a simple thing to
Yeah.
do.
I just want to add too, like one thing that I don't think is fully leveraged or known is the citizen committees that we have and the opportunity for the public to participate in those.
Right.
Those are, you know, if you have a specific issue, it's likely we have a committee dedicated to that specific issue. So what I've tried to do more of, and it's something maybe the rest of us on the council should do if we're not, is when I hear an issue or see an issue, my first step is go to this committee meeting and share that with them, because those are the people talking about these
Mhm.
things. And they welcome your participation. And I had one individual who had an issue about programming, and I invited her to go to the rec advisory board. And now she's going to every meeting because she sees that as an influential group to hear her and to move things forward. Because again, it's not just at the council where while we make decisions, we have these committees
Right.
that are very influential because they have a lot of expertise that we don't have,
Mhm.
that can really dig into the issues, and we look to them to help guide us as well. And so participating with those, it's less intimidating because it's less formal, you know.
John, how well are those committees advertised and the agenda so that people would know if I have an issue, this is the right committee to go to? Now, I hear you loud and clear, and you're absolutely right. It's hard to get people to participate. But things that affect them, they're more likely to participate. And if they know somebody on the committee, or they can personalize it in some way, so it affects their neighborhood, anything like that, makes them more likely to participate. And so I think, I keep asking myself the question, how do we engage more people? And I think, I really think people respond to personal contact.
Yep.
When Dana and I first did this 3 years, you said
It's
4 years
almost
ago.
for February, 4 years
And
ago.
and this was a fairly well attended, there's about 20 people there. And they suggested we had ambassadors to every neighborhood. And the ambassador would bring what was going on in the town and then bring back to the people, whatever committee or the council, what people in the neighborhood, but to kind of build that bridge between, we're a large community getting larger all the time, and we're geographically diverse. And we got a lot of new people who don't
Right.
know who's who. So
Right.
anything you can do, we can do it. I don't have all the answers. I just been thinking about it.
Well, I look at also, you could help us find ways to do things. To your point right now, we have, second issue for me was growth. I hear growth all the time. It's the biggest issue in the town. I tell folks, go to the website. All growth goes through planning. You can sign up to the planning committee, and every time they post something, it goes right to your email. You have the agenda, you can read it. I mean, if you want to be informed, it's that simple on growth, okay? And then you could actually approach or go to a planning board meeting or whatnot. So the mechanisms, a lot of the mechanisms may be there to help with that. It's just getting people to understand those mechanisms are there. And I'm gonna tell you, I went to your last meeting, I think, before COVID.
The one at St. Nicholas, you were there.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was there, which I thought was great. Can't remember what the theme was, but I do remember what the result was. And the result was that we all have to try to think about accepting the results
Right,
somewhere in the middle ground. It may not be
Absolutely.
exactly what you wanted, but
absolutely.
did you get anything out of it that makes it better for you? So that's
Yeah.
kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, That's exactly right. That's a part of it.
Who said you don't always get what you want? Those are stones.
Yeah,
but-
it is, it is, and it's, yeah, no, and that's the whole deal.
Yeah.
Because if everybody, I mean, there's no way for everybody to get what they want. That's not even possible. And, as a mediator, if everybody is equally dissatisfied at the end,
Right.
that's a good
That's
solution.
right. That's a win.
You
Yeah.
split them. Yeah.
I always find that the most important thing that comes out of these meetings, and they're not every meeting or every issue, but I would help because encourage you to keep in mind, if you have something that's coming up, it's probably more in the school than anything else, but something that is really going to be controversial, then think of this process. I have found that when I get people and it unfortunately, it does have to be facilitated most times, really hearing somebody who thinks differently than they do, they often don't agree, but boy, does it get rid of all the animosity and anger.
Yeah.
It's, I can live with this. I understand why you feel the way you do. And that helps to build strong community, helps to build a trust, I guess, that we have.
I
The
just want
DOT
to introduce
thing,
myself before,
Yeah.
before we close out. I feel like I should have done this in the beginning, but I'm Allison Carrier. I'm the Communications and Community Engagement.
What's the
Coordinator.
title again?
Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay, I knew it
very
was something
fitting.
pertinent, but I didn't.
But I started October of 2020, so about a year ago. And so it was during COVID, so this is kind of like the only way
Yeah.
I've seen it happening. But
Right.
I do see that in person would, and having more collaboration would make such a difference. But I have been a resident for 3 years, and so before working here, I was more of like that passive resident, reading the leader when it comes, and like having it on the counter, seeing it on Facebook, and occasionally going on the website when I needed to. And just because of my communications background professionally, I saw that there were huge opportunities. I was like, so when the position came up, and I'm so grateful for council for prioritizing that as a need too. I just was ready to dive in, and so far we've made some big changes to just how the website, how you navigate the website, improvements on Facebook and Instagram, and creating that consistency with the newsletter and the leader. So I do see that it's kind of across, but I hear you on the engagement piece. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement there. And the technology component stood out to me when you said that too, because it's so easy for me to just put it on all the platforms. But that is missing a big cross section
Yeah.
of people, especially with Scarborough
Yeah,
demographic.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I do appreciate hearing from you. And
Mm.
I know you've all had touch points with Scarborough Community Connections already, but it's nice to tap into that a bit more.
Yeah.
Well, we've
Good,
heard
well-
good things about you too, Al.
Oh.
And it's great to meet you.
Yeah,
I mean,
nice to
I've-
meet you too. I
I've
feel like it's
seen
been
your
a while.
name
Yeah.
and that title, obviously, it's like, oh, wow.
Right.
There's a person.
I know, yeah, it's a good match.
So, yeah,
Good.
I want to thank you both for coming and sharing your perspective today. And I think for us, I think part of having you guys come today was because at our next meeting, I would like to make sure we think a little bit about goals for next year, and maybe even specific goals we might want to bring to the council during our goal discussion on the 19th around communication in general.
Good.
So I would just ask everybody next time, come with just one idea, like what's the one thing? It can be a simple thing that we want to just discuss at the next meeting and potentially see how we might want to roll that out. I think same thing for you, Allison and Liam, like what's the one thing you would recommend that we could do to either improve education or engagement or whatever's the right thing that we want to discuss at our next meeting, and potentially see how that could turn into a goal we would want to recommend to the council or even for just this committee for next year. But thank you.
but by the
No,
way-
thank you. I want to say thank you. You notice Dana and I are running for council because we know how much work you put in.
That's right. But however, on that note, I do want to make it clear that within reason, I'll speak for myself.
Thank you.
I'm willing to do some, offer some services to the town as a volunteer. If it has to do with, helping to design and facilitate some processes, if I'm here and available, I'm definitely.
Well, you're on public
interested.
record now.
Yeah, and you notice how quiet I was. So I agree
I
with
said
her.
within reason.
So I think you can count on, definitely I'll reach out to you, because
Yeah.
I have my own little mini council corners anywhere, because I'm not bashful, I'm not shy. I
No
saw people
kidding.
at Hannaford.
I
get
would've
people
thought.
surrounding me, and about 90% of the time it gets pretty heated, but hey, that's just part of the game.
Yeah,
But you're right, you hear so many different perspectives. A lot of times it's out of, not anger, but frustration.
Frustration,
But you
yeah.
need to hear them. There's
Absolutely. And they
definitely-
need to hear each other.
That's right.
Because really, people think they get clouded in their minds and they really think that if I think this, it must be
Right.
so, and everybody else must think
Everybody
that
is
way too.
stupid. I know that one. Anyways, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so moving on to the next agenda item, it's discussion on council corner content and schedule. So again, I think similar to, Allison had reached out to me last week, just starting to float around some ideas for upcoming council corners. So I don't know, Allison, if there's anything that you have that you want to recommend, but I think for this week, it's really focused on traffic. I wrote the article that's just based on what we've been doing with MTA and with the TMP and everything that's out
Did
there.
that come up today?
Wednesday.
Yeah.
The 15th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I drafted something just to talk a little bit more broadly. The Transportation Committee also recently discussed impact fees, traffic impact fees. So I just figured trying to put a piece together that just talks a little bit more about all of the traffic related stuff that's been put out in the press and that we've been talking about.
So just to give me a little bit of background, how have you guys been prioritizing articles? How have you been prioritizing who writes what? Is it solely you guys doing the
It's
writing right now?
volunteer. It's like pulling teeth. You'll find out.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
I'm
it is
sure.
all
Again,
counselors.
I'm positive
Yeah.
that.
So I think at least in the communications committee, we all can always had a standing agenda item for us to discuss it. I think there's an opportunity, which Alice and I were kind of starting to talk
Yeah.
about, but I think we probably can talk more broadly about this in terms of, are there certain themes we may want to run with or certain cadence of certain topics? Like I think Allison, maybe you had mentioned.
I suggested maybe quarterly there being a chair's report, like the same way you all received the chair's report, but if there was a version of that for the public, that it could go in there, but then it could also live on the website too, just so that there's like a kind of like looking ahead type
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
discussion. And then you had also mentioned more representation from committees, and so maybe like a committee chair could contribute an article, and we could do it either on schedule or on
Yeah.
general rotation.
So one of the things I would suggest a little bit as we kind of establish our goals for next year, if there are clear themes there, like if we have a goal on growth again, or whatever the area might be, those are the types of things I think we should think about. Like, how do we ensure we're talking about those things? Because if there are goals, in theory, we should be talking about them to the public and be looking to different people on the council potentially to author an article. I think the other thing that's worked well in the past year is a lot of times, April, it's usually, there might be something in the e-news, but also something in the paper.
Yep.
And Allison, I think, has done a good job to help make sure that we're planning accordingly so that whatever is in the e-news could be in the paper as well.
Yeah.
Just so that way it's consistent.
Yeah, and 2 per month rather than 3 per month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
So that's been another thing, but we also have a list of really good topics that we brainstormed, which we might need to find,
Yeah,
that were just
that
like,
was my next question.
we had some like
Yeah,
standard
we put that-
topics.
We put that somewhere, right?
I think it's in our communications committee folder somewhere,
Mm.
but I know
They're just ideas.
Yeah.
But
and they were all kind of like different areas where, again, education might be the focus, where it's
Yeah.
just, some things people just don't know, like, they don't know what an impact fee is, and so if I'm writing an article about impact fees, that might be like too deep
Yep.
for for most residents, and so maybe we need something just on what is an impact fee, how is it assessed, and what does
Right,
it actually do?
I
it's
think
kind of
we-
like trying to tackle the TIF and the CEA in 500 words.
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
I tried,
I know. I love it for trying.
The top one.
yeah,
But we have gotten into a good rhythm of it's very much updates from council, but I also think we could kind of sprinkle in or alternate with some educational pieces like you're
Yeah.
talking.
yeah.
For sure.
And I did suggest committees potentially to spread the wealth a little bit, to maybe have Allison also reach out to the citizen committee
Yes.
chairs to say, you know, Jennifer Ladd, what is happening on the transportation committee? Is there something you want to update on?
Right,
You know, maybe somebody from Long Range, whoever's the relevant committee.
yeah, like the pest management committee, is her name Rita? She gives me articles seasonally, so she's one that I have been working with.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I don't think other committees like think about that as an
Yeah.
outlet, so.
Right, like
I'll start
recently, the
building that
volunteer
connection.
need for the rec department.
Mhm.
That'd be a great article from anybody's perspective.
Yeah.
you know.
And I think they're willing to participate only because I know some of the committees I've been on for the citizens, ones, we talk about, hey, can you actually do a LTE in the leader to just get the word out?
Sure.
So I think there's a willingness to, for some of them to write something. So just a way to extend the writing a little bit more into the
Sure, I
committees.
mean, this ties right back into what we were just talking about with engagement too. I mean,
Right.
our citizen committees, like those are so topical, and the people, in my experience so far, I feel so passionately about
Right.
serving those committees that it almost is like we view it as a lift because you guys are talking about how much writing it is and how much it is to get these articles pulled together. But some of these committees might really like the
They wanna do
opportunity
that,
and
yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
you know, grateful that, yes, shine a light on all of this work that we're doing
Yeah.
because,
Mhm.
you know, they do have some things that they would like to
Yeah.
share with the community.
And they can
And the
also
only thing-
promote and invite
Yeah,
people to attend.
Sure.
as
Yeah, the
well.
only thing, and you wouldn't be aware of this, the negotiated slot that we've got with the leader from
Mhm.
council corner
Mhm.
must be written by a counselor.
yes,
It doesn't mean it's gotta be by scratch by a counselor, but it's gotta come from a counselor
Sure.
perspective.
okay.
But somebody else could write 80% of it, so they're like,
Well, as the
Allison
liaison, you
behind
know,
the
as
curtain.
the liaison to
Right.
the Conservation
right.
Commission,
that's
I,
right.
you know,
Oh,
I
good
could
point,
have,
Yeah,
you
That's
know, the
right.
Conservation Commission submit something to me, and then I could write the intro and the conclusion. I mean,
yeah,
you know, we could find a way to make it.
Mhm.
But I just, because we're discussing the topics, I thought we'd do for the leader, one more survey. So the
Mhm.
leader, the survey's wrapping up. We heard from Jason today. And we're gonna be presented on the 9th. So,
Of January.
or was it the 5th?
Fifth.
Or was it,
Fifth.
okay,
so it could be a good segue in. I don't know what the first Friday in January is, but to try to get people to tune in for that.
okay,
Plus do
Okay,
a
so
wrap
the-
up of it, give some of the dynamics of it, you know, how many people participated, this and that, and maybe allude to future surveys, jot type surveys, we're coming up with a mechanism of how people get engaged with that. So
I
that's
think,
what I was saying.
yeah, I think it's, you know, it's reminding them that, and then maybe even, because we're gonna potentially do the workshop on it on the 5th of January, the first Wednesday. Is
Yes,
that the current plan? And then the leader article would go out the week of the 10th, correct?
Oh,
I'm just looking at the calendar.
which
Oh,
would
no,
be the 3rd.
it would be the week of the 7th, right? Because the first falls on a Saturday, so it's that first week, right? It falls on the first week, so it would need to be submitted December 30th. But we would also need the town newsletter, the e-newsletter goes out on that Saturday, the 1st. So do you think it should be the article that's kind of promoting that workshop coming up, or do you think it should be after that on the 15th when it's like highlighting what the findings in the report?
Well, we could do it either way, right? One, the
Yeah.
front end.
One's kind of
promote it,
promoting what's coming
Yeah,
up,
right,
the other's
back end,
looking
yeah.
back at what the presentation
Recap.
was.
Yeah,
You know, then again, I'm sure kind of like our GMO reporting, because we have an awful lot of things out there. I think even our counselors forget. I go look at our GMO reporting every day because it's real time.
Mhm.
When they enter a permit, it shows up on our report.
Mm.
So I look at it quite often. So we're gonna have the survey out visible like that, correct, for a long time? For a long,
The survey's gonna be on the website, yeah.
Mhm. So it seems like the,
Well, so then the counselors you all have a goals session, right? When is that?
the 19th.
19.
Oh, okay, so that wouldn't work for the 15th then.
And that's where we're gonna try to shame some people into getting involved.
Yeah.
Mm. right?
So are we suggesting still some sort of leader article that would need to be submitted by the 31st or 30th, you said, Allison?
Yeah,
And it's gonna be more promoting that well,
well, we need two for January. One is the survey and the other is something else. So
Okay.
I guess whatever that something else is, we'll have to determine the timing.
is that for the leader or for the e-news? Is the leader, it's just one, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we need the one for the 1st and the 15th for the e-news.
okay. I think so we'll do the survey, the first, for that first e-news.
Okay,
probably,
and the leader.
And the leader.
Okay.
Ken, do you mind continuing to? lead
No,
and track that?
I'll do that one.
Okay.
With that, I'll do it. I'll also-
And then the next e-news would need to be submitted by January 14th.
Yeah,
And so that would be before our goal workshop. So I was
Right.
thinking our goal, like reporting on our goals would be good, but that will be.
yeah, I
too
guess that would
early.
have to be for February.
Yeah,
But it will be after the workshop on the survey.
so we can do another article.
Right, and then maybe put it to
Okay.
bed. there.
Okay, so two survey.
So
One is
January will be
promoting the
survey
Once to
month.
promote the workshop, and then once to recap the
Recap the
workshop.
workshop.
Plus promoting the workshop, that's also gonna be talking about like how many people participated
Right,
and all
right,
that stuff,
right.
yeah.
And I would think too, like, it'll likely be a topic of continued conversation in our goal setting, I'm sure. So again, we could even allude to that meeting because it's a critical input to help us
Yep.
identify the
Hmm.
areas of focus. So I think to Janice and Dana's point, it really does show like we're taking the survey, we're discussing it, we're acting on it. It's gonna help us shape our goals potentially based on that input.
Hey, who's on the rules and policy? I know I am, but I don't know who else.
Jean Marie and
Myself.
Okay, so we should really promote the council comments following public comment.
yeah, that was, Paul proposed it, we tabled it because we wanted to let the new chair get in.
Yep.
And now that we have the new chair,
And
I
who's the
think,
chair?
the new chair is Jean Marie
Okay,
and also John is the chair, because again, technically as the chair, right, he has some flexibility on agenda as well and might want to do something different. So we figured, wait till we knew who the new council chair was to see if they had a perspective that the Rules and Policy Committee wanted to consider to help shape
yeah.
what that
That would
recommendation
be,
would be.
that would be good. Have it come to the chair.
And now that we have the vice chair
Right.
also doing it, like, I'm assuming you guys might want to have that first conversation and talk about it at Rules and Policy if you want to add that as a potential agenda item if Jean Marie wants to include it. In terms of the other council corners, maybe in our February meeting, potentially, I'm guessing at this point, we might want to just kind of see where the goals land and see if there's like a framework
Okay,
we want to use based on the goals and, you know, for once you've had more time to kind of see what's going on, we can just figure out, is there a framework we want to create to help us get a rough schedule? It doesn't have to be precise, but like something that just helps us kind of plan ahead so that we can say things like clearly during budget season. I feel like most things are reserved for budget.
Yep.
So we can probably block those a couple of months out there, but like, are there other things we want to highlight? All right, any other discussion on this agenda item? No? Okay, so let's move forward to general updates. So we're going to talk about newsletter metrics, website redesign and launch, mailer light subscribers, and survey. I don't think survey actually made the agenda, but that was something that I think that was more of a something that just got missed as
It
a
was just an
step.
update. from
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
we just got, right.
do you want to give? an
yeah,
update?
I have some visuals
Okay.
just for something to look at. And I did start it with the survey, and it's just what Jason sent earlier, but you can comment on it. So the goal, as we all know, for the mailed one was to get 600 back before they opened it up for the online one. They received 862. Jason seemed enthusiastic about that, like that was uncommon, so.
Yeah, that was 20% versus your standard 15%.
Okay. And then he said, I guess I hadn't realized that too, that he would be sending out a report by the end of this week or early next using that, but then he's not giving the presentation to you all until January, right? So I guess I will give a couple of weeks to look at it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But we should talk about when that goes public on the website too. And then just as a reminder, the online survey to the general public has been open since the 1st, and it's going to close on Sunday, the 19th, so this Sunday. I'll do another push on social and then also in the newsletter on Wednesday. And Jason just mentioned that so far they've received 135 responses, and then I had also mailed the ones that came in from when you all did the tabling at the polls. Yeah,
That
so.
wasn't bad. That was about 26%.
Oh, good. And a few more have come in since I mailed those a couple weeks ago. So maybe I'll do one last mailing just to get those ones in too.
That's over 1,000.
Do you, when we talk about posting, because we're supposed to also be getting that capability that some of the other towns have posted, where they
That
can, the
dashboard.
geolocation stuff, yeah,
Yeah.
is that gonna be part of the website once we get that?
I do
Are we
want
getting
to, I
both?
do want to integrate that. And I also want to kind of look at where on the website that belongs. Like if there's a natural place for it right now, if it means like having a new page. I know we've talked about in the past doing like a welcome to Scarborough page or something more that has like demographics where it could like speak to that. But because we don't have that right now, I think just putting it on that page where we've been putting the survey link and about the survey, just so people know to go back there. But yeah.
And just in terms of the social push, because I know some of the residents have expressed some concerns, are we gonna, like now when it's posted on social, it always goes to the website, right? Instead
I
of just-
relinked it,
Okay.
I believe, or I should check one of them, but yeah, I have an ad going on Facebook. So right now I have it posted and pinned to the top of the town Facebook page that anyone who likes the town page would see that. But if someone doesn't like the town page and they have on Facebook on their profile that they live in Scarborough, they'll receive an ad for it. So it'll come up on their newsfeed at some point, or it's supposed to. So we have a couple $100 going to
Okay.
that, just to try to get some people who don't necessarily follow the town already. So that's actually been beneficial too, mutually beneficial, because it's getting people to like the page. I've seen a little bit of an uptick in page likes too.
And maybe just for clarity, in case anybody's watching, because I know there's also been some conversations where Liam was reaching out to some residents this week about how we're going to use the results and the difference between the mailed and the
Statistically valid.
yeah, like all results matter, all opinions matter. So everybody, if you're watching, just take the survey and it will get considered. So I don't want people to get too confused about, well, I didn't get a mailed survey, so it doesn't count. No, it all matters. All, if we want to see that data, we want to know what people think. And as a council, we'll look at it and decide what we're going to do with it. So I think just making sure people know that, you know, please participate if you haven't. And it does take at least 20 minutes. So
Yeah.
set aside some time and, you know, please share your feedback. All right, sorry.
I saw that you had added interest in the metrics on the e-newsletter, which we haven't talked about in a bit. So this will be a good
Yeah.
recap, and it actually works out well because we did used to have this on the agenda more consistently. And last December, it was on the agenda, and we had 1,952 subscribers. And since then, in 1 year, we've had an additional 573 subscribers. So that's a great push, I think. I know
Yeah.
you in the past said you had a goal to do 1,000 in a
Yeah.
year with the Be Informed campaign, but I think that that number is a
That's
really
very
good, a really
Very
good push.
What will be interesting, because remember we asked in the survey for people to provide their email addresses. So
Mhm.
from those 1,000,
Oh, to see if anyone, how
that
many
might
come
add to
from
the
that.
list.
I
So you
forgot
might,
about
you
that.
might get to your number.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, So that also, that number doesn't include, that's just people who are on the town newsletter list. But additionally, it goes to town council, the SEDCO board, and all town staff. And before, the town staff page hadn't been updated, so that's something that I've been trying to add and make sure that that's up to date too, that anyone who works here is also getting that. So that's why the total distribution list is a bit higher than the
Oh, okay.
subscriber list.
Yep.
So a couple other highlights that I wanted to note are that before someone subscribed to the newsletter, they would get the next newsletter in the queue. But now I have it set up that they get an automated welcome email that's just kind of like confirms that they received that.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that
That's good.
instantaneous first email. I mentioned adding all town staff, and then I just wanted to highlight that you have all been really consistent about adding that line to the council corner anytime you're putting out a published piece. So that's been a good addition. And then also with that marketing postcard that we've been able to order in bulk and then distribute out of the library and town hall and the election, so more in person. I think that goes a long way too for the people who aren't necessarily like on social media or seeing it through other avenues. So we'll keep tallying that and see how that number continues. The other thing that we were talking about is the website redesign project, and I've been a bit hands off of that, but the webmaster, Brian Butler, he provided me with this update for it. So as you know, he updated the Scarborough schools site. Was that back in September? It's like before the launch. He was doing it over the summer, and it was before the launch of the or the start of school. So he told me that the feedback has been positive from the school site, and he does this with the town page too, but he's been monitoring the site analytics, the Google Analytics for it, and he sees kind of like where people are navigating and if he needs to make any changes. So overall, it's been positive, but he has been adapting it to improve along the way. And he mentioned that process, along with that initial website survey that we did over the summer, is going to help him as he is putting this new town site together. So what he's working on now is doing adding all of the content. I think it's kind of like heavy lifting of getting everything from this current site onto the new site. Text, pictures, all the documents. We did take a lot of new pictures over the summer, so he's going to try to incorporate that just for a more fresh look. And then he also said configuring user groups, so basically the people who have access to do edits and show up in the directory, things like that. So that's what he's working on right now. Next, he's going to be doing additional SEO, search engine optimization, and UX is basically like accessibility or user navigation, like how easy it is to use the website for people. So kind of making improvements upon that. I'm gonna dive in and touch base with him too at a certain point, and we'll do more of a deeper review of what the copy is and just the consistency and the tone across all of the pages, and see if we can do some edits there. And then obviously staff training will be big because it is on a totally different platform, and hopefully it'll be easier for staff to use, but it will involve some training. And then lastly, promotion of the new site, just kind of like he did for the school site too. And he made a really good video. I don't know how widely publicized it was, but he did do a good intro video when the school site launched, just to kind of like give a brief overview of like where to navigate. So I think he's eager to do that again for the town site when it's ready to launch. Timeline, it was always set out to be February of this coming year, and a couple factors come into play. The Munis, the employee software or human resources software, Munis Cloud, is going to be changing, and so they're going through a process of getting that up to date. And then also Board Docs is going to improve the way users can navigate the minutes and agendas for public meetings, and that's going to live in one place. So that's been a big project that is going to be on the new site, but they're going through training right now to get that underway. So when those two projects are ready, then the website can also be ready because they're going to live on the new website. So I think the plan for IT is to reassess in January if they're ready by February, or if they should postpone that go live date. And if they do postpone, it would be after budget season, so it's not to interfere with any staff processes or just how people use the website right now, and wait until after the budget season.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, even, just reminding us of the schedule. Like, for some reason, I thought it was gonna be earlier that we were gonna
Yeah.
transition. Like, I thought we were transitioning by the end of this year at some point, but knowing that it was gonna be February and knowing budget will shortly follow suit,
Mhm.
it might, like, this might actually be a good thing, because I think for people, and we did so much work last year on the budget stuff and the budget portal, but
Yeah.
I think
know,
it
it'd
worked
have to
out
be
really
new.
well. Yeah. So it might be a good thing if it has to get postponed.
Software never goes in on time, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So that's it.
That's it?
For that. And then there was one, was that it, everything?
Is Liam here?
Oh, Miller Lite. Liam, there was, yeah. He's hiding behind the scenes, but
Hold on, Allison. I'm pulling
okay.
it. Bear with me. There it is. All right. There we go.
All right, last one. Ken, you mentioned this during the presentation, but just for people who want to have more of that immediate access to any new agendas coming out. Last August 2020, it was a bit before I started, but I set up the board and committee agenda notifications through MailerLite. It's basically like we use Constant Contact for our email platform for the town. MailerLite is another, similar to Constant Contact, but another email platform. And I think that was chosen as one that would be easily accessible for those sending out the agendas to use and just copy a template each time. So that has been used consistently. And so far 85 emails have been sent out. There are 55 subscribers, which is a low, I think is a low subscriber amount. And the last subscriber was back in April. So to me, that tells me that the interest is low, because I think that this is pretty visible, because this is on the Stay Connected page, and that's on the homepage of the website. That's where we're sending everyone who wants to subscribe to our newsletter. So it is there, but I also don't know how much, like how regularly these are sent out, because I mean, I'm seeing that 85 have been sent out, but I know I've heard you say that you get some, but not others. So I don't know of those 85, like
Because it should be
what they are.
every month.
Yeah, and they are every month, but it's like 3 every month.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be, how many should it be? One for all of
I
them?
would think 55 at least.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's 55 subscribers. They've received, there have been 85 emails sent out, like, not to 85 people, but like 85 times it has been
Oh, okay.
sent out. Yeah,
Okay.
But we only have 55 people that are,
yeah. And those are only like 55, they haven't, all 55 haven't received 85 emails, because it's like only the ones that they're signed up to receive.
got it. Right.
Yeah,
This one's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've had some feedback from some people that they just don't know where the agendas are. And this is like their
This is-
opportunity.
this is a way to
sign up.
get an email about it.
Yeah.
Right to your email box.
Yeah.
Right.
So can we, like, it might actually be good. Well, I don't know if we can do this legally, but like if we have their email for the, no, we can't. Well, you know where I'm going. Like, if we have it for the e-news, can we say, hey, e-news group, we're gonna also be adding you to MailerLite, and you can
Well,
unsubscribe
yeah.
or,
I do, my suggestion is, I believe on the new website, there's some better integration of like, if if it says like, if on the website, like a new agenda is added, I think there's like a little bell icon next to it that someone can sign up to get notified anytime that's just updated on the website. So it removes the need for this
Okay.
whole extra step too,
Gotcha.
if they can just directly get notified through the
Mhm.
Oh,
website.
okay, yeah.
So I'm a little hesitant to put a ton of work into this if we can address this with the new site.
That makes sense.
But, okay, yeah.
Mhm.
But if we do, another thing is just like, it could either be integrated into Constant Contact that we're already using, or at a minimum, these emails, like right now, like the title of them, they all have like the same title, so it's hard for me to see like what the meeting, like
Oh,
what meeting
okay.
it's for. Like all
Yeah.
I see is Town of Scarborough, and also like the branding doesn't really like match the branding of our other stuff. So like there are some like small things I can do right now, but I don't necessarily want to like push people to this or do like a big like social push about it
Makes sense.
if we can
Overhaul.
improve
Yeah.
it, yeah, with the
Yeah.
new site.
Cool.
Yeah. just so you know.
Anything, any other updates or things you want to share or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the next item is public comment. Is there anybody in the public who would like to participate?
There is not.
Okay. Next item is future agenda items. Like I mentioned, I think having everybody come with their one idea that we can discuss in terms of what could happen. And I don't know if you guys will have a rules and policies, and probably until after that, I'm guessing at this point.
I don't.
Um,
I'm not.
so-
Again.
That might be something we can continue to discuss that.
We'll
particular item.
definitely bring it up.
Sure.
Sure.
Any other agenda items you guys want to potentially add for next time?
No, I think getting a clear handle on how to build a schedule and what to set for priorities is a good place for us to start. And then figuring out what our priorities are will help us decide what activities we want to pursue for each one of those different
Yep.
priorities.
I agree. Great. All right, well, if that's the case, then item 9 is adjournment. Can I get a motion?